Okay. All right. All right. Now I got a real long question here, and I just want to thank the callers who are still on the call. Looks like we hanging out tonight. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna regret this in the morning, but okay.
I ain't gonna keep you up too late, man, because I don't want you grumpy in the morning, man. All right. So look, let me start with this one. Okay, we have 88 people on the call, and I'm not gonna say the sister's name. And it's past my bedtime too, so let me try to read this. Okay, her question. I really understand what you mean when you spoke about people running off fear and how it's kinda like hypnotic. In your speech reclaiming our community, you mentioned how we lost 2 generations, and I agree. Almost all the guys except maybe one and some of the women in my community went kinda astray. They're still Muslim, but they're so deep in their mess that they feel like they shouldn't come to the masjid or come around the Muslims because they made some mistakes. There was a point in time in our community was really strong, and out of nowhere it started breaking apart. I realized one of the reasons was fear. Every time we go to a khutbah at the masjid or a lecture, we hear fear Allah over and over screaming. No one talks about how to move forward in our community. No vision, and I know we should fear Allah, but how often do we hear love Allah or talk about how merciful Allah is? That alone can drive a person away when you teaching them to fear something rather than love. You cannot see the beauty in something when you in fear the entire time. I used to be in so much fear growing up that I felt like no matter what I do, I would never be a perfect Muslim in Allah's eyes because I wasn't good enough. And Allah is so merciful. Prophet Muhammad said Allah's mercy to his slave is 70 times more than a mother for her child. And we know how much our mothers love us and forgive us. I think the problem with the youth and even some adults now is that they believe that they will never be good enough. What advice would you give on this?
That is a lot. No, no, I'm not talking about in terms of the words and how much you put into it. I'm talking about the depth of what she mentioned, man. SubhanAllah, so profound, man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your words. And I mean, I pretty much don't need to say much. You said it all, man. You said it all. I mean, from the problem to even the solution. You know what I mean? Like, you said it all right there, man. SubhanAllah. Just being put in so much fear. Just our communities function on fear. You know what I mean? That we don't even actually get a chance to enjoy Islam. You're constantly being taught. I remember when I accepted Islam in prison, and the famous halal, haram, the foods to eat that were halal and haram was being passed around in the prison. And when you look at this book, as a new shahada, I looked at the book, and after I got finished looking at all of the foods that was haram, I said, well, I might as well just become a vegan, because what the heck can I eat? Everything is haram. Doritos haram, Skittles haram, this haram, everything is haram. Jesus is haram, and this is haram, and it's just like, wow, you can't eat anything. And that is equivalent to what happens to many of our Muslim children growing up in our homes. They're taught that everything is haram. So they are left with no other choice but to just do the haram. That's the only way that they know how to function, because if you tell somebody everything is haram, then eventually they got to pick the haram a whole other problem. And that's where many of our children end up in, haram situations like fornication, haram situations like drinking, smoking weed. They end up in these situations not because they necessarily want to be in the haram, but we have left them no alternative. Everything is haram. So they start to say to themselves, well, if everything is haram, then I got to do something because, you know what I'm saying, like I'm surrounded by everything that's haram. So let me take the least of the haram, or they take the other route and they say, well, if everything is haram, I might as well just go all out and just do it, because, in the law,
I'll never be good enough anyway.
I'll never be good enough anyway.
Yeah.
I'll never be good enough anyway. So I might as well just go ahead and do it. So it creates a whole mindset. And this is the psychology of many of our children that first and second generation that we lost. In our attempt to make to create this utopia, here in American Islamic communities, we want to create this utopia where we fear Allah and we live our lives, fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as she said, why keep saying fear Allah instead of love Allah? It even has a different tone to it when you say fear Allah versus love Allah. And to be honest with you, Taqwa doesn't necessarily mean fear Allah. It means to be conscious of Allah. To be conscious of Allah. Taqwa we translate it as fear, but Taqwa actually means putting a wiqaya. It comes from the word wiqaya, which means to put a barrier between yourself and the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing the right thing. And that is to be conscious of Allah. If you're conscious of Allah, then you're consciously aware of all of the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe we need to change the language. Helping us to change the language will help us to change the culture. Language and culture, are, intertwined with one another. You can't separate one from the other. So maybe we need to work on changing the language, and starting with using words like the likes of and my companion. No, we're going to change the language. We don't talk like that, man. We Americans. We speak clear English. And we're not going to adopt, these, this jargon and these phrases that have been, used to create this cult that we know as, this hard line Salafiyya. No, we're going to change that. Take that out of your vocabulary from this day forward. Don't ever use those phrases again.
So everything is not the hawk anymore. We can say, stuff is the truth. Everything is not hawk. Hashtag hawk. Okay.
Right.
Exactly. And I told you this too with fear Allah. Fear Allah is basically the Muslim shut up.
Yes, fear Allah.
So that's basically just saying shut up, but throwing Allah's name in it. That's how it's used. If someone is saying something you don't like, you say fear Allah. So it's like basically just saying shut up. All right.